Merry Christmas, everybody. Can you believe that it's actually here today? I don't know if you've already been able to spend a little bit of time with family, opening presents, or if that is yet to come, but I hope you have an incredible day. We are wanting to take a little bit of this time to celebrate the birth of our King, our Savior, Jesus Christ, and I hope this is meaningful for you and your family. And again, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas. Let's let Brittany and the team lead us off as we worship our King together.
Merry Christmas.
Well, good morning, and we want to say Merry Christmas from our family to your family. As we reflect on this series, The Giver and the Gift, we've been singing songs of hope, peace, joy, and love this Christmas season. I want to read us a verse this morning. Matthew 2:2 says, "When we saw the star in the east, we have come to worship him." Let's worship together this morning. You can sing along with us. The words are going to be on the bottom 1/3 of your screen.
Joyful and triumphant, oh come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, oh the King of ages. Oh come let us adore him, oh come let us adore. If our God is for us, then us adore Him, Christ the Lord.
Before you set the edge of time, foundations of the earth and sky, you saw it all and said that it was good. The joy was set before your eyes. You knew that you would give your life. You saw it all and said that it was good. Behold, behold the one our love has come. Behold, behold the one our King has come. The heavens roared, the earth stood still. His final breath, he tore the veil. The angels sing, holy is his name. Defeated death, he broke the grave. Our hope restored, the lost are saved. We lift our voice in never-ending praise. Behold,
Oh, isn't it great to just hear that music? Even if you didn't sing along, just hearing that music brings us right back to that place where we recognize that this is such a special occasion for us. I actually want to go back, and it's a story that a lot of us are familiar with, but I want to go back and read this because Luke writes this stuff down for us. So let me just read the Christmas story as told by Luke. He writes, "In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. So Joseph went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and the line of David." It's where he came from. It's where his family was. And he went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. Now, while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. Imagine this. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Don't be afraid. I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all people. Today in the town of David has been born to you. He is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly hosts appeared with the angels, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to men on whom his favor rests." And when the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." And so they hurried off, and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. And when they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had just been told them about this child. Can you imagine what that night was like? Being those shepherds, or being the people that were gathered around as it was time for the baby to come. Oh, it must have just been absolutely incredible. And amidst all the hubbub of this season that we experience in our day, it all boils down. The reality of this time boils down to this thing, that God was born as a baby. Emmanuel, God with us. Generations before Jesus was even born, the prophets were speaking about him, and they were anticipating this day when he would come. And one of them described it like this. He says, "The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned." In the darkest of what the world offered, in the silence of God, God had not spoken for 400 years before then. People were just eager. They were waiting. "God, have you forgotten us? God, have you left us?" These were the kinds of questions that they were asking. And into that darkness, the light came. The light came. And Jesus, God himself, was that light. Oh, it must have been amazing to have been there in that day and seen it happen for yourselves. Today, we get to celebrate it. We celebrate it with gift giving. We celebrate it as we gather with friends and family. We celebrate it as we share a meal together. And there's something special about this day. But this day marks only the beginning. For the celebration is not just what happens on this day. The celebration is actually how we live our lives. You know, Jesus, like I just said, was described by the prophet as the light that came into the darkness. And when we look around our world, there's plenty of darkness, isn't there? All the chaos and the junk of life going on in our worlds. Some of us experience as we look at the more global picture and all the stuff that's happening around the world in cities like Aleppo and the refugee crisis in Turkey and Greece and Europe. Some of us experience it more personally in our own lives, where that which we thought was a strong, solid foundation is being rocked, and we find it's even crumbling, and we've got to grapple with that reality. The darkness seems sometimes very consuming, but into the darkness, the light continues to break. The light continues to break. And today, as we celebrate the birth of Jesus, we celebrate the light coming into the darkness. But how does this continue? Like, how do we live that out? What difference does it make moving from here? You know, Jesus, just a little bit after this in Matthew, He describes his followers in a way that should sound a little bit familiar. He says, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, get this, in the same way, let your light shine before all men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." Think about that for a moment. Jesus was described as the light by the prophets. He even said about himself, "I am the light of the world." And then he looked at his followers and he said, "You are the light of the world." You don't take a light and hide it from people. You put the light right out there so that everybody can see it. Jesus has done his rescuing of us in our lives as we have said yes to him. As we have become his people, he has planted within us his Spirit. And now we become the light that the world is looking for. We are the light that breaks into the darkness of our world. And it happens in sometimes seemingly mundane sorts of ways. We become the light when we become bringers of joy and hope and peace and love to the world around us. We've been talking about that this past month leading up to our celebration of Christmas. And remember, some of those ways that you talked about this as a family, that you talked about it as a small group, the ways that we could actually bring hope to the people around us, the ways that we could bring peace or love or joy to the people around us. Even today, think about some of the ways that you might be able to do this in some simple ways, some unexpected ways. My guess is you probably have some Christmas cookies yammering around the house somewhere, and you're just going to eat them all. And, well, as good as that sounds, you might have some that you're not going to eat. And maybe you even want to take some time and spend time together as a family and bake some fresh Christmas cookies. And then here's what you could do. Think about some people in your life today who could use a little bit of joy, an expression of the light coming into their world. You know, there are people who are serving our communities all around us. They work in hospitals and fire departments and police stations. Maybe you bring some of that which you have, which you've been given, and you offer it to them. On your way to Grandma's house, swing by the police station with a plate of cookies and say, "Hey, thanks for serving our community. We know you're not with your family on this Christmas day because you're serving us. Here, have some cookies." Or maybe you stop in by the hospital and walk up to the nurse's station in ICU and you're bringing a box of Joe with you. They'll love you for that. And some extra Christmas cookies. Don't do the fruitcake. Nobody wants the fruitcake. You're going to have to eat that yourself. But stop by there and no strings attached, just saying, "Hey, it's something. You're not with your families because you're taking care of sick people. Thanks for doing what you're doing. Merry Christmas." See, it's just these simple things that we get to do where we become the light of the world. And then there are things that don't seem quite as simple. When we offer forgiveness to those who have hurt us. See, in that moment that we offer forgiveness, pain doesn't get the last word. Freedom does. And so when we do the work of forgiveness to those who have hurt us, we're bringing the light into the world. When there are people, groups of people or family members that are at odds with each other in conflict, and we actually bring peace into that conflict, God would use us to bring peace into that place. That's hard, but that's also one of the ways that we bring the light into the darkness. That neighbor that's all by themselves, stopping and talking with them and listening to the stories. I know you've heard the stories 50 times already. Listen for 51. They just want to know that they're being heard. Every day, the door opens up for opportunities. Remember, we've been praying that this past month. Every day, the doors of opportunity open up for each of us. And as that door opens up, we have the opportunity to live out what Jesus said was true about us. As his light comes alive in us by faith, when we say yes to him and we choose to follow him, as he comes alive in us, he has given us his light. Right? It's amazing. This is what we're celebrating here. But he also reminds us, he looks at us, he looks at you, and he says, "You are the light of the world. Let them see your good deeds. Let them see what you do. Let them see that light. Let the world see. And as they see, they will praise your Father in heaven." I hope that this is going to be an incredibly special day for you. That you've got family, that you've got some friends that you're going to be hanging out with and celebrating the birth of our King with. I also hope that you hear this calling that we have on our lives, not only to receive this light that we're celebrating today, but to bring this light, for we are the light of the world. Merry Christmas and have a great new year.